Today, I want to tell my story about going from being a targeted individual to a tested individual. In 2015, my experience started by being touched by invisible entities. I didn't know it at the time. I was having these strange sensations and things happening in my body, and I didn't understand what was happening. And then it took about a year, 6 months to a year, and then I started actually hearing voices. And then, of course, everything changed. Once you start hearing voices, you go through ontological shock. Your worldview is shocked. It's thrown completely, torn apart. And once you realize that your thoughts are under surveillance, then you start changing your thoughts. So I started changing my thoughts. I started hearing voices. I had a breakdown, and I started changing my being aware that, things can hear what I'm thinking. Well, I don't want them to hear certain thoughts. And then before you start hearing voices and before you realize, that you're being watched, then you don't care much about your thoughts. You care a little bit, you don't want to think certain things, but for the most part, you don't care. But what are thoughts? We don't really have any idea where thoughts come from. And so what you didn't understand, but once you start hearing voices, you do understand, is that your thoughts are being heard by something. And so you want your thoughts to be the best ones possible. Because you're afraid of being judged. And in the same way, your behavior changes. So it's just like whenever you, things that you would think that you wouldn't say around other people. Well, they're your private time, the things that you do when you're alone, your behavior changes too, because you're always in public now. You're always being watched. You're always being observed. And that changes your entire perspective of the world. So now you always act like you're in a public setting, right? Well, I started taking medicine in 2016. In 2017, I got diagnosed as schizoaffective, and I started taking medicine. In 2016, I started taking medicine. I took over 50 different medications. None of them stopped what was happening. None of them ever stopped the voices. They didn't stop the physical sensations. As many tested individuals do, I isolated. I became afraid to be out in public. I already had back problems and some shoulder issues, a lot of joint issues for me. And so I was in some pain, and I just parked myself on my couch or my bed, wherever would ease the pain the most. And I just wallowed in my own self-pity because it was terrible. Here's a video of me actually in 2020 when I was just starting to come back to life and fight my way out of it. And I started doing a podcast with my siblings. And here's a video of me from that time. And I know it's shocking, right? So I was at 275 pounds when all this started, I was already overweight, but I was at 275 pounds when all this started, and it ballooned, and I got up to 411 pounds. So then I had developed agoraphobia, right? I became afraid of people. I became afraid of social settings of any kind. I was drowning. Imagine a river, with the crazy raging rapids, right? And so I was drowning in a river, and all I had was one hand holding on to a rock on the bank, one big rock. And I was holding on for life, and I would come up for air, and I would drown for a while to the point of almost death. And I would come up and get one gasp of air. And when you're in that spot, you want to just let go. And I did try to let go a couple of times, but every time I would try to leave this place, a blankness would overcome me. Not a calm, really, but just a complete emptiness, just devoid of anything, devoid of thoughts, devoid of emotions, just nothing. And that would come over me every time I tried to do something like that. So with my agoraphobia, all these problems, I was in a terrible, terrible place. And so I started saying, okay, I've got to climb out of this river somehow. How am I going to do it? I realized I can't stop what's happening to me. So what am I going to do? I figured, well, I'll just take it one step at a time. Small steps, baby steps. It reminds me of, I think, isn't that what they say on the movie What About Bob? Like baby steps, right? And so I remember thinking that actually, yeah. And I said, okay, I've just got to do baby steps, And so I just started small. I thought, what can I control? I can't control much in this life where I'm at right now, at that time. And so what can I control? And this was about, 2020, something like that, 2021. And so I started just like taking out the trash. And I was like, okay, I don't have the ability to do anything else. But what I can do is I can take out the trash when it's full. And I'm not going to commit to any more than that because I don't feel I can do any more than that. It's hard enough just going outside with the trash to the dumpster and seeing my neighbors. It's hard enough just doing that. And so then after I started doing that and I dedicated myself to it, like my life depended on it. I have to take out the trash. I have to. If I care about myself, if I have any pride left from myself, I have to do this if I care. And so I started taking out the trash. A couple of weeks later, I said, okay, now there were many years where it was hard to take a shower until I finally got a shower chair. And even still then, it's hard to take a shower whenever there are people talking to you the whole time, And so it's really scary to take a shower. So a couple of weeks after I started taking out the trash, I started saying, okay, every time I use the restroom, I just have to wash my hands because I would feel this recurring like guilt if I ever thought my hands might be, nasty. So I was always like, okay, and it just bugged me. I would obsess about it. I'd be sitting there and I'd be like, just wash your hands. But the reason I wouldn't is because I would be in so much pain. I would be like, I have to go back. I have to get back to the couch, to my position where it hurts less. And I'm in a hurry, and I've been sitting on the toilet and the voices have been talking and I'm frantic and I just got to get out of here. Well, so I started saying, look, take time to take care of yourself, to care about yourself, wash your hands when you're done at the bathroom. So this is what I'm talking about. This is how small it was. It wasn't me going, let me take a big, from this rock to the big next rock. No, there's a rock here and then there's a rock here. At first it was just getting my other hand out of the water. You know what I mean? And so, and I slowly pulled myself up just little by little. And then I said, okay, look, I'm spending all of my money on fast food because I can't stand up. I'm in so much pain. I can't stand up long enough to make my own meals. So I've got to figure out a way to feed myself without spending all this money at the fast food place. And plus, it's so bad for you. I'm never going to lose any weight if I don't start doing something about my diet. So I very slowly started changing my diet. What I did at first, I love sandwiches. So I said, okay, I don't want to eat all that bread. So I'll just make sandwich wraps. So I would just get some flour tortillas and I would buy some lunch meat and some cheese and just throw some mayo on there and make me a little sandwich in a wrap, like a burrito. And so that's what I did with everything. I would just go, okay, what can I put in this wrap that will be easy for me where I won't have to stand up for a long time because I couldn't. So the thing that I realized is I have to act like my life depends on this. I have to do it with such seriousness and such intensity that it's like my life depends on this thing happening. And it's just like if a doctor, if you went to the doctor and you had a heart attack or something, and the doctor said, hey, you've got to change your ways or else you're going to die soon. You've got to change something. What would you do? You would change your whole life if the doctor said, hey, you're going to die pretty soon if you don't change something, right? That's how you have to see this in this tested individual experience. You have to say, my life depends on it. I've got to do it. There's no question. I have to do it. So then, after that, a month later, I said, okay, now, once I started to lose a little bit of weight, I started saying, okay, now I can start walking a little bit. And I remember going out and walking a half a block a half a block I walked, and that had to be good enough because I could not reach any further up the bank to the next handhold. I could only just do a little bit. And that's what I said is I'm just going to do whatever I can to climb out of this raging river. What I started seeing was that I would be so hard on myself, and I had to learn to forgive myself. I had to learn to forgive myself not only for the state that I had let myself get into, forgive myself for the thoughts that I felt guilty about because now they were being observed, forgive myself for the actions that I was doing, even though I knew I didn't want to be that person. Eating the wrong foods and watching, things that I shouldn't be watching, like, starts with a P. I don't know if I want to say that, but like things like that. I knew I didn't like those parts of myself and I wanted to change them, but I had to forgive myself. So then I realized that there was a huge turning point for me in about 2023 where I realized that this thing could hear my thoughts sometimes before I could hear them. And so this changes everything once you realize this is happening. There have been plenty of documented cases where someone will be a voice hearer and the voices will say, stop. Like I have a friend, my co-host on this show, on this Parawareness channel, Kevin Orr. One day he was at work and the voices said, stop. And he stopped and a forklift came zooming by that would have maybe hit him had he kept walking. He had no way of knowing. He did not know that was about to happen. And this happens enough for us to be able to, give it some credence, right? But for me, it was more like I would be about to voice a thought, and say the words of the thought, and then the voice would say something and answer the question that I was about to ask. It would answer it. Because most of us think that the thoughts are just words that we're saying in our head. Instead of speaking the words out loud, we're saying them in our head, right? And that's not what thoughts really are. You learn once something shows you that. I did a couple of talks on this channel with Peter from a Russian man who now lives in Italy. And Peter is... he was hearing the voices and they told him, they said, you don't have to say the words in your head. We can hear your thoughts without you thinking them. And what this teaches you, it's a beautiful lesson in a way. What it teaches you is it gets you in touch with your subconscious. It gets you in touch with the thought behind the thought. Because you start to realize, oh yeah, before I ever started saying these thoughts in my head, oh, I need to go do the laundry. Before I say that, I have the thought that is the subconscious thought of, oh, I'm going to go do the laundry. But we have this, and then I don't know if it's just because this is how we communicate with other people, but this is how we communicate with ourselves as well. We talk to ourselves. And that's not what thoughts are. Thoughts are in the subconscious. And so anyway, that changed everything. And it got me more in touch with my true feelings because I thought, well, I need to change my behavior and my surface thoughts because that's what this thing can see. So that's what I was worried about and trying to change. But the whole time I would have these other thoughts that I had trained myself not to think, and they were still picking up on those. It was still picking up on those, whatever this is, right? We don't know what it is. But so it would still pick up on those thoughts. And I didn't know it because usually this phenomenon does not reveal itself. It doesn't tell you what it's doing. It lets you hang yourself by your own petard, as they say, right? Like it lets you go on down any road you want to go down. But it doesn't tell you what it's doing. And then once you figure it out, you can see what was happening. What you learn is that thoughts are more akin to feelings and thoughts are more akin to instincts. Thoughts, most people think that thoughts are words they're saying in their head. And no, thoughts are at a much more, instinctive level. And once you start to train yourself to feel that, then you start to think things like, oh, well, what am I feeling right now? What are my instincts right now? If you think about it like energy, what kind of energy am I giving into the world right now? What is my base energy like? I've been a lifelong experiencer. So all my life I've been trying to, not working very hard at it, but all my life I've been trying to figure out, what is this world? What's going on here? But once I started hearing voices, then I got really serious and I really, really researched. I mean, I gave up a lot of fun life in order to do the research to try to help myself and everybody else in this world figure out, because all my life, that's been the big question. What is this world? What are we? What are we doing here? Just existence. What is all of existence? It's, and so I went on a mission to try to figure that out. So it was no weird thing at all for me to, listen to 8 hours worth of audiobooks in a day, to listen to 8 hours worth of, videos, researching with videos. It was, that's probably the low end. What my research shows, number one, we have no idea what's actually happening in this world. We don't know. But number two, the phenomenon has been happening in similar ways all throughout human history. That's what our research shows. There have been voices in people's heads throughout human history. I did a video on this called Normal Guy News, and it's the episode, If It Bleeds, It Leads, is the title of the episode. And it's about hearing voices. And I show a list of all the people in the Bible who heard voices in their head, and the list goes on and on and on. And it names almost every person in the Bible, right? It could be multiple different types of entities. If you believe that it's aliens or something like that, well, the people who really get deep into alien lore, you can really get deep into some alien lore. And there are thousands of different types of aliens and races and all these different things, species, so many different kinds. And then, of course, you've got ghosts, spirits, angels, demons, and then you've got egregores that are tulpas, that are thought creations. Throughout history, these things have been happening to people, and they didn't know what it was, and they gave it a name. They created a story for it. So I took the stance of saying, I'm not going to believe something until I prove it to myself. And I don't have to have utter proof. I don't have to, nothing will ever have, it doesn't seem like we will ever have complete proof of anything necessarily. But I wanted to prove it to myself. So I've never proven it to myself. So I still say, if you really do the correct research, a true research, you will see that this has been happening to human beings throughout history. And so what does that tell us? It tells us that you have to either see this pretty much, and this is my opinion, as ancient technology and controlled by some alien race, or you have to believe in the natural abilities of human beings. And it could be both too, right? But let's start with, if it is ancient aliens or attacking us, trying to keep us down, or if it is technology that is being used by some secret cabal, what do we do about it? That's what you come to. What do we do about it? Well, you need to strengthen yourself, don't you? I mean, if the human race is being manipulated and under attack and being tortured, we need to prepare ourselves. How do we prepare? We get stronger. We understand ourselves, know our psychology. I mean, this phenomenon shows us that something is in contact with our subconscious thoughts. So if we don't believe telepathy is possible, let's put that aside for now. Then how can we keep the aliens or the secret technology from psionically attacking us? How do we do that? Our research and our study and our practice shows that the best way is to keep your mind clear. The more that you offer up in the way of talking to yourself in your own head, or even, having thoughts, subconscious kind of thoughts, thinking about things, the more that you do that, especially with talking to yourself in your own head, the more that you do that, the more that you get messed with. And then the other thing is, the more negative thoughts you have, this phenomenon seems to give you what you put out. So if you are in a state of mind where you go, I know for a fact that these are ghosts, the phenomenon will start acting like ghosts. You'll probably even see some ghosts. You'll hear ghosts talking to you all the time. And then something will happen which will transition you to go, oh, I don't think it's ghosts anymore because I saw an alien UFO or whatever, you know what I mean? Something like that will happen and you'll go, oh, that doesn't seem like ghosts. And then you'll transition on to the next thing. And as from what we've learned at Parawareness, you go through stages and you transition. And once you fully get done with a thing, you move on to the next thing. But anyway, so part of it is having your purest, most honest, pure thoughts. And if you don't feel purity, your definition of purity, if you look at purity and you think, well, that's for other people, I don't want to be pure, I want to be a bad boy or something like that, you know what I mean? That's fine. What we found is it's not even about caring so much about morality. It's about caring about honesty and being truthful about the things that you really do want in your life. If you want pornography in your life and you feel like there's nothing wrong with it and it makes you a better person, then you're probably going to deal with the phenomenon better. You're going to have a better experience with the phenomenon if you embrace that truth. Because remember, it is not seeing the face that you show to the world. It's not even seeing the face you show to yourself. It's seeing your true self. So you've got to get your true self in order. And so, what are we saying here? Limiting your thoughts by practicing clearing your mind. Now, doesn't that sound similar to a spiritual experience? Meditating, right? Clearing your mind, centering yourself, focusing. My understanding is that regardless of what is happening here, the practice is going to be the same. Find out who you are for real. Like really learn who you are psychologically, emotionally. Don't be controlled by your emotions, but don't allow yourself to block them. Allow yourself to see them and understand them and flow with them, but don't let them control you. Look at all the meditators and gurus in the world, sending love out into the universe. What most schizophrenics, how their experience start, most of them start with using hard drugs, usually speed. And so what happens when you use speed? You're talking to yourself all the time. You're the whole time. And you're having all these thoughts, so many thoughts. Those are the people who usually have the hardest time with the voices. So the other thing to think about is, what if telepathy is real? What if human telepathy is a thing? Person to person, what if it's a thing? So if telepathy is real, and that's what we're experiencing, is not just telepathy probably with humans, but with all kinds of different beings, right? So if telepathy is real and we can talk to each other and we can hear, just connect to the field and hear, all these different voices, we don't know who they are. What's the best path forward? Well, if your thoughts are broadcasting to the world around you, and they have been your whole life, then you are in the fortunate position to know this, because everyone else is, if telepathy is real, everyone else has been thought broadcasting the whole time as well, and they didn't know it. You at least get to know it. So you've got a leg up. Try to see it as a positive thing if you can, and not focus on the negative of it. So, and remember, it's not your front thoughts, right? It's not the words you say to yourself. It's the thoughts behind the thoughts, the sponsoring thoughts. Those thoughts at the in your instinctive, emotional being. So again, assuming telepathy is real and you're broadcasting at all times, right? You have the mic. You have the microphone and it's always on. And that's what causes the ontological shock, because it's like you don't ever get to turn off your mic. And it's so difficult to make that shift. But now you get to say to yourself, if telepathy is real and we are connecting to other things, all the things around us, communicating energetically or telepathically or anything like that, then what do you want to say in that mic? What do you want to say to the other humans? What do you want to say to the plants? What kind of energy, what kind of thoughts do you want to send to the plants? What do you want to send to the jellyfish and the spiders and the elephants? What do you want to send? What do you want to send to the other humans? It's easier. It's a lot easier for us to say, I'll send love to this plant than it is, I'll send love to this tiger. And then it's even easier to say, I'll send love to that tiger, but not to this other human who may be dangerous. So in closing, I'll just say this. I believe we are in a time of awakening. And we have to see this as an opportunity and not a punishment. And I don't mean to say that it's all roses, it's all easy and beautiful. It's not. It's ugly. At times it's ugly and it's hard. We don't embrace the suffering, but we do embrace that the suffering causes us to get stronger. In my opinion, when you don't know the path forward, because all of life is confusion, we don't know which way to go. We don't know what to do. We don't know how to solve this unsolvable equation. We don't know how to fix the world. We don't know how to fix anything. What do? Fix yourself. Become the best self that you can. And that's what you should focus on. Trying to catch the bad guys, trying to bust the perps, trying to expose all of this and blow all this up. You can do that too, but you better be working on yourself, because that's what the most important thing is. And if you can work on yourself, then you can start to help other people. Then you can start to help your community. I hope you'll do that.